based on psychological factors that are primarily internal to and under the control of the learner rather than conditioned habits or sociological factors. However, the principles also attempt to acknowledge external environment or contextual factors that interact with these internal factors. The principles are intended to deal holistically with learners in the context of real-world learning situations. Thus, they are best understood as an organized set of principles. No principle should be viewed in the isolation.
Cognitive and metacognitive factors. Cognitive factors refer to the mental processes the learners undergo as they process an information. The way learners think about their thinking as they engage in mental tasks in the concern of the metacognitive factors.
Cognitive and metacognitive factors. Number 1. Nature of learning process. The learning of complex subject matter is most effective when it is an intentional process of constructing meaning from information and experience. There are different types of learning processes. For example, habit formation in motor learning, and learning that involves the generation of knowledge, or cognitive skills and learning strategies. Learning in school emphasizes the use of intentional processes that students can use to construct meaning from information, experiences, and their own thoughts and beliefs. Successful learners are active, goal-directive, self-regulating, and assume personal responsibility for contributing their own learning. The principles set forth in this document focus on this type of learning.
Number 2. Goals of the learning process. The successful learner, over time with support and instructional guidance, can create meaningful, coherent representations of knowledge. The strategic nature of learning requires students to be goal-directed, to construct useful representation of knowledge, and to acquire the thinking and learning strategies necessary for continued learning success across the lifespan. Students must generate and pursue personally relevant goals. Initially, students' short-term goals and learning may be sketchy in an area. But over time, their understanding can be refined by filling gaps, resolving inconsistencies, and deepening their understanding of the subject matter so that they can reach longer-term goals. Educators can assist learners in creating meaningful learning goals that are consistent with both personal and educational aspiration and interests.
Number 3. Construction of knowledge. The successful learner can link new information with existing knowledge in meaningful ways. Knowledge widens and deepens as students continue to build links between new information and experiences in their existing knowledge base. The nature of these links can take a variety of forms such as adding to, modifying, or reorganizing existing knowledge or skills. How these links are made or developed may vary in different subject areas and among students with varying talents, interests, and abilities. However, unless new knowledge becomes integrated with the learner's prior knowledge and understanding, this new knowledge remains isolated, cannot be used most effectively in new tasks, and does not transfer readily to new situations. Educators can assist learners in acquiring and integrating knowledge by a number of strategies that have been shown to be effective with learners of varying abilities, such as concept mapping and thematic organization or categorizing. Number 4. Strategic thinking. The successful learner can create and use a repertoire of thinking and reasoning strategies to achieve complex learning goals. Successful learners use strategic thinking in their approach to learning, reasoning, problem-solving, and concept learning. They understand and can use a variety of strategies to help them reach learning and performance goals, and to apply their knowledge in novel situations. They also continue to expand their repertoire of strategies by reflecting on the methods they use to see which work well for them. by receiving guided instruction and feedback, and by observing or interacting with appropriate models. Learning outcomes can be enhanced if educators assist learners in developing, applying, and assessing their strategic learning skills. Number 5. Thinking about thinking. Higher order strategies for selecting and monitoring mental operations facilitate creative and critical thinking. Successful learners can reflect on how they think and learn, set reasonable learning or performance goals, select potentially appropriate learning strategies or methods, and monitor their progress toward these goals. In addition, successful learners know what to do if a problem occurs or if they are not making sufficient or timely progress toward a goal. They can generate alternative methods to reach their goal or assess the appropriateness and utility of the goal. Instructional methods that focus on helping learners develop these higher order or metacognitive strategies can enhance student learning and personal responsibility of learning. Number 6. Context of learning. Learning is influenced by environmental factors, including culture, technology, and instructional practices. Learning does not occur in a vacuum. Teachers a major interactive role with both the learner and the learning environment. Cultural or group influences of students can impact many educationally relevant variables, such as motivation, orientation toward learning, and ways of thinking. Technologies and instructional practices must be appropriate for learners' level of prior knowledge, cognitive abilities, and their learning and thinking strategies. The classroom environment, particularly the degree to which it is nurturing or not, can also have significant impacts in student learning. Motivational and affective factors. Number 7. Motivational and emotional influences on learning. What and how much is learned is influenced by the motivation. Motivation to learn, in turn, is influenced by the individual emotional states, beliefs, interests, and goals and habits of thinking. The rich internal world of thoughts, beliefs, goals, and expectations for success or failure can enhance or interfere the learner's quality of thinking and information processing. Students' beliefs about themselves as learners, the nature of learning have marked influence on motivation. Motivational and emotional factors also influence both the quality of thinking and information processing as well as individuals' motivation to learn. Positive emotions such as curiosity generally enhance motivation and facilitate learning and performance. Mild anxiety can also enhance learning and performance by focusing the learner's attention on a particular task. However, intense negative emotions, example, anxiety, panic, rage, insecurity, and related thoughts, for example, worrying about competence, rumination about failure, fearing punishment, ridicule, or stigmatizing labels, generally detract from motivation, interfere with learning, and contribute to low performance.
Number 8. Intrinsic motivation to learn. The learner's creativity, higher order thinking, and natural curiosity all contribute to motivation to learn. Intrinsic motivation is simulated by tasks of optimal novelty and difficulty, relevant to personal interests, and providing for personal choice and control. Curiosity, flexible, insightful thinking, and creativity are major indicators of the learner's intrinsic motivation to learn, which is a large part a function of meeting basic needs to be competent and to exercise personal control. Intrinsic motivation is facilitated on tasks that learners perceive as interesting and personally relevant and meaningful, appropriate in complexity and difficulty to the learner's abilities, and on which they believe they can succeed. Intrinsic motivation is also facilitated in tasks that are comparable to real-world situations, and meet needs for choice and control. Educators can encourage and support learners' natural curiosity and motivation to learn by attending to individual differences in learners' perceptions of optimal novelty and difficulty, relevance, and personal choice and control. Number 9. Effects of motivation on effort. Acquisition of complex knowledge and skills requires extended learner effort and guided practice. Without learners' motivation to learn, the willingness to exert this effort is unlikely without coercion. Effort is another major indicator of motivation to learn. The acquisition of complex knowledge and skills demands the investment of considerable learner energy and strategic effort, along with persistence over time. Educators need to be concerned with facilitating motivation by strategies that enhance learner effort and commitment to learning into achieving high standards of comprehension and understanding. Effective strategies include purposeful learning activities guided by practices that enhance positive emotions and intrinsic motivation to learn, and methods that increase learners' perceptions that a task is interesting and personally relevant.
Let's proceed to the developmental and social factors. First, developmental influences on learning. Individuals learn best when material is appropriate to their developmental level and is presented in an enjoyable and interesting way. Because individual development varies across intellectual, social, emotional, and physical domains. Achievement in different instructional domains may also vary. Overemphasis on one type of developmental readiness, such as reading readiness, for example, may preclude learners from demonstrating that they are more capable in other areas of performance. The cognitive, emotional, and social development of individual learners and how they interpret life experiences are affected by prior schooling, home, culture, and community factors. Early and continuing parental involvement in schooling and the quality of language interactions and two-way communications between adults and children can influence these developmental areas. Awareness and understanding of developmental differences among children with and without emotional, physical, or intellectual disabilities can facilitate the creation of optimal learning context. Let's proceed to the social influences on learning. Learning can be enhanced when the learner has an opportunity to interact and to collaborate with others on instructional tasks. Learning settings that allow for social interaction and that respect diversity encourage flexible thinking and social competence. In interactive and collaborative instructional context, individuals have an opportunity for perspective taking and reflective thinking that may lead to higher levels of cognitive, social, and moral development as well as self-esteem. Quality personal relationships that provide stability, trust, and caring can increase learners' sense of belonging, self-respect, and self-acceptance, and provide a positive climate for learning. Family influences, positive interpersonal support, and instruction in self-motivation strategy can offset factors that interfere with optimal learning, such as negative beliefs about competence in a particular subject, high levels of test anxiety, negative sexual expectations, and undue pressure to perform well. Positive learning climate can also help to establish the context for healthier levels of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Such contexts help learners feel safe to share ideas, actively participate in the learning process, and create a learning community. Let's proceed to the factors of individual differences. First, individual differences in learning. Individuals are born with and develop their own capabilities and talent. In addition, through learning and social accumulation, they have acquired their own preferences for how they like to learn and the pace at which they learn. However, these preferences are not always useful in helping learners reach their learning goals. Educators need to help students examine their learning preferences and expand or modify them. If necessarily, the interaction between learner differences and curricular environmental conditions is another key factor affecting learning outcomes. Educators need to be sensitive to individual differences in general. They also need to attend to learners' perceptions of the degree to which these differences are accepted and adapted to by varying instructional methods and materials. Next is the learning and diversity. The same basic principle of learning, motivation, and effective instruction apply to all learners. However, language, ethnicity, race, beliefs, and socio-economic status all can influence learning. Careful attention to these factors in the instructional settings enhance the possibilities for designing and implementing appropriate learning environment. When learners perceive that their individual differences in abilities, backgrounds, culture, and experiences are valued, respected, and accommodated in learning tasks and context, levels of motivation and achievement are enhanced. Proceed to the last individual differences factors, the standards and assessment. Assessment provides important information to both the learner and the teacher at all stages of the learning process. Effective learning takes place when learners feel challenged to work towards appropriately high goals. Therefore, appraisal of the learner's cognitive strengths and weaknesses, as well as the current knowledge and skills, is important for the selection of instructional materials of an optimal degree of difficulty. Ongoing assessment of the learner's understanding and curricular material can provide valuable feedback to both learners and teachers about progress towards the learning goals. Standardized assessment of learning progress and outcomes assessments provides one types of information about achievement levels both within and across individuals that can inform various types of formative decision. Performance assessment can provide other sources of information about the attainment of learning outcomes. Self-assessments of learning progress can also improve students' self-appraisal skills and enhance motivation and self-directed learning.